Good morning. It's a beautiful day, isn't it? Welcome to the home of Unitarian Universalism in Central Washington. My name is Rhonnie Craven, and I serve on your board of directors and your pantry team. I am also the celebrant for today's service. If you are a visitor this morning, we are so glad you are here. This morning, we welcome every person of goodwill just as you are. However you get around, whomever you love, whatever body you inhabit, whatever your age, you are welcome here. We invite everyone to join us for a social hour after the service, both in person and on Zoom. For the folks on Zoom, you can find the order of service in the chat. So please take a short moment, and greet your neighbors. It is so good to be together this morning in all the ways that we gather. We are so glad that you are here. For announcements today, our pantry fund is depleting, so if anyone feels the need to donate some food, we have a tub out in the foyer, or a monetary gift is always appreciated. Thank you. It is important to take some time every Sunday to acknowledge the story of the land our congregation sits on. We gather on the homeland of the Pasquosa, where they live for generations upon generations as stewards of this land. The Pasquosa people still live here. For many years, the United States government has broken its 1855 and 1893 agreements with the Pasquosa. Am I having some feedback or? Okay, I'll just keep talking. The government stole the land ceded to the Pasquosa through fraudulent surveys, indifference, intentional violations, and by land transfers to colonists and corporations. Non-Indigenous people and corporations, including us as members of CUUF, continue to profit from the colonization of this land. Only through examining our part in maintaining privilege and forming a true partnership with the Pasquosa people will decolonization and meaningful reparations be achieved. You can find further information on the Colville Tribe website and at the Wenatchee Valley Museum and Cultural Center. The Pasquosa continue their traditions and seek to have all their rights recognized.
Our call to worship this morning is from Welcoming Spirit Home, Ancient African Teachings to Celebrate Children and Community by Sobonfu E. Some. And I think this applies to our congregation as well. Community is the spirit, the guiding light of the tribe, whereby people come together to fulfill a specific purpose, to help others fulfill their purpose, and to take care of one another. The goal of community is to make sure that each member is heard and is properly giving the gifts he or she has brought into this world. Without this giving, community dies. And without community, individuals are left without a place where they can contribute. Community is that grounding place where people share their gifts and receive from others.
This is the time in our service when we kindle a sacred flame. If you are joining remotely, please feel free to light your own chalice as well. We join Unitarians and Unitarian Universalists all over the world in lighting our chalices this morning. Our chalice lighting words are from Ellen Rocket, Connected in Mystery and Miracle. As we light this chalice, may we be reminded here of our highest aspirations and be inspired to bring our gifts of love and service to the altar of humanity. May we know once again that we are not isolated beings, but connected in mystery and miracle to the universe, to this community, and to each other.
Our wisdom reading is titled Our Deepest Fear, and it's from A Return to Love by Marianne Williamson, who is perhaps the most famous student of A Course in Miracles and ran for President of the United States, if some of you remember. This passage is often falsely attributed to Nelson Mandela. Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. We ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, fabulous? Actually, who are you not to be? You are a child of God. Your playing small does not serve the world. There is nothing enlightened about shrinking so that other people won't feel insecure around you. We are all meant to shine, as children do. We were born to make manifest the glory of God that is within us. It's not just in some of us, it is in everyone. And as we let our own light shine, we unconsciously give other people permission to do the same. As we're liberated from our own fear, our presence automatically liberates others.
So for those of you who are unfamiliar with Rita, I'm going to introduce her. Rita Salama is a member of this fellowship and serves on the worship team, fundraising committee, and the steering team for our covenant groups, and is a newly elected board member. She recently moved back to the Wenatchee area after being in Southern California for 10 years and is very thrilled to be home. Rita has a keen interest in East Africa. In addition to traveling and volunteering there, she also worked for Village Network Africa, a small nonprofit based in Claremont, California, with projects in rural Tanzania, where she was on location in October of 2015.
Tales of Love and Fear from Tanzania. Sounds so romantic, exotic, and exciting, doesn't it? Well, the truth is, all of us are experiencing love or fear every day, whether we are in Tanzania or in our own living room. The fear is always based on the tale we are telling ourselves about how we aren't enough, there isn't enough, how wrong others are, or how wrong the situation is. The fear may masquerade as depression or anger or disgust or envy or some other negative emotion, but underneath the disguise is fear. Yet the fear is based on the story. In 2003, I was introduced to A Course in Miracles. It's a psychological self-study program. It has the ability to profoundly affect a person's perception of the world in a positive way, shifting fear-based perceptions to the reality of love. That's the miracle. I'll be sharing some of what I've learned from the course and how I put it into practice when I was in Tanzania. And this is where I'm going to give a disclaimer. I am a student of the Course in Miracles. I practice this. I am not perfect, so I don't do this all the time. In September of 2015, I was traveling to Tanzania to spend a month working with my boss, Anita Bowling, the founding director of Village Network Africa. It's a nonprofit with a mission of humanitarian projects in Africa, focusing on health education, clean water projects, and improved sanitation. Anita, a nurse with a PhD in developmental psychology, says that it breaks her heart that people are dying of diseases because they don't have the knowledge they need to prevent them. Although Village Network Africa is secular, Anita is Catholic and works in Tanzania with the Sisters of Notre Dame. This Catholic connection at one time would have been a problem for me. I was raised Southern Baptist. My family was at church every time the doors were open. However, in my first year of college, I let myself question whether I believed in God. I realized I couldn't believe in the one that I was brought up with, and with no alternative, I became an atheist. For years, my fundamentalist background left me afraid of churches and even the word God. But my story changed. 20 years later, I joined CUUF, experienced a lot of spiritual growth, and can now easily toss around the word God without cringing, which is a good thing since I was expected to go to Mass in Tanzania at the Catholic boarding school where I was staying. Now, everything about Mass was new to me since I hadn't attended one before. But for all Westerners, Catholic and Protestant, the drumming and African dancing and the hair raising, brace yourself, exactly, would probably be unfamiliar to all of you. There was a call and response, again, new to me, but familiar to Catholics. And it was between the priest and the girls that went like this. The priest said, God is good, God is good, God is good, God is good, all the time, all the time. God is good all the time. That is his nature. Wow. Okay, to most Catholics, the wow is something new, but I love the way the girls said it. For the month I was in Tanzania, I spent a lot of time with nuns. Sister Rashmi, who works with the Maasai tribe in a very remote part of Tanzania, must travel many hours to get from the village to a town where she can buy supplies. One day, while traveling back to the village, her driver ran over a guinea fowl. Sister Rashmi yelled, "Stop, stop!" She jumped out of the Land Rover and went back to where the bird was lying in the road. She picked it up and gently cradled it in her arms and lovingly looking at the dead bird proclaimed, "These things are delicious." We humans are storytellers. We are constantly telling ourselves tales about the world around us, trying to make meaning of what is happening. For example, in the story I just told you, as I was telling it, you were telling yourself a story as well. And you were surprised when the stories didn't match. These stories we tell ourselves based on our past and what we think will happen in the future are perceptions, and they're constantly changing. By contrast, the truth is what is actually happening in the moment without a story. So the stories we make up aren't real, yet we act as if our stories, our perceptions, are true. On top of the stories we are conscious of, there are also the stories created by culture that are so insidious that everything is perceived through that lens without us even being aware. A Course in Miracles says, whatever you accept into your mind has reality for you. It is your acceptance of it that makes it real to you. Our cultural lens is very real to us. I've learned that traveling can help me question what I've accepted into my mind, including my cultural lens. Once I begin to question my beliefs, I can begin to question what is real, especially my thoughts. My goal is always to be peaceful, loving, and joyful. If I am not at peace, feeling joy or love, I can question my thoughts, let go of the story, and my feelings will change as well. Let me set the stage of my stories in rural Tanzania. Dirt roads, houses of homemade brick, stucco, or sticks and mud, one paved highway for about 40 cents, a dala, which is a minibus crammed with passengers, will take you into Arusha, the third largest city in the country. Anita and I are staying at a large Catholic boarding school for girls in our own private dormitory rooms. They are quite pleasant. We had electricity sometimes, running water most of the time, although not suitable for drinking. Our rooms had flushing toilets, a luxury, beds with mosquito netting, a necessity, and a large plastic bucket for water with an electrical coil that you put in the water to heat it for bathing. Water and electricity? Terrifying. We had a candle and matches and the fixings for instant coffee. Every night, we were each handed a thermos, ubiquitous in rural Africa, filled with the hot water the nuns had boiled for us. The school had a wall around it with a locked metal gate. If you were coming or going, the guard with a scary AK-47 would come out of his guardhouse, and if he approved of you, he would come out and open the gate. This was the same guard, gun in tow, who met the darling little preschoolers in their school uniforms, as well as the older children who didn't board at the school. Directly across the narrow dirt road was another locked metal gate that led to Zinduka, a 4-story women's center. This is where our hosts, the nuns of Notre Dame, live and where Anita and I had our meals with them around a table in the very small dining room. This was my first experience of being around nuns, and I wasn't sure what to expect. My childhood stories about Catholics had been from my Baptist grandmother, who told me about a great aunt who had run away from a convent and showed up at my grandparents' house, but was tracked down and forced into the car screaming and fighting, and nobody heard from her again. And I heard stories about the severity of the nuns' punishment in classrooms. And so I believe nuns were strict, pious, judgmental, and did not have a sense of humor. In other words, no fun. What I found instead were hardworking, delightful women who loved to laugh. Sister Sacha oversaw the Women's Center. Sister Tara ran the school. Both were from India. It seems that America sends its nuns to India, and India sends its nuns to Africa. I don't know why. The other nuns were younger. A few were from Tanzania, one was from Kenya, the rest were from other nearby African countries. All of them spoke English and their native tribal dialect. Most spoke Swahili and some a few other languages. Here they all were, with their particular cultural lens, living together. Not always easy, but they made it work. This was their family. One of the other nuns, Sister Esta, it's really Esther, but they say Esta, worked with Sister Ashmi out in that remote village. One night as she was traveling to spend the night at the Women's Center, the bus ran off the road and tipped over. Sister Sacha received a phone call about the accident, but no one knew where Sister Esta was. After quickly making arrangements for transportation, Sister Sacha and Sister Ashmi headed out into the dark to find her. I was sure this was a lost cause, but they brought her back, and she was hurt, but not too badly. As she was telling us the details of the accident, she added that the bus driver had run away into the bush. Anita and I were both incredulous. He ran away? And just as emphatically, Esta said, yes, he would have been killed if he had stayed there. She explained in Tanzania, people often take justice into their own hands. So that was an example of how cultural lens was used to judge what happened. The Course in Miracles says not to judge, not because it's wrong or bad, but because we actually can't. We don't know everything that has come before or everything that will come after. In fact, the Course says that the only proper use of judgment isn't about whether things are good or bad, but it's how do I feel? Am I at peace? Is there joy? Do I feel love? If not, I can let go of the stories I'm telling about the past or the future that are the cause of all my anxieties and fears, from the slightest irritation to a full-blown panic attack, because I don't know if those stories are true. It is difficult not to judge, especially other people who aren't like us, which, let's face it, is everyone else. We find ourselves judging them based on the stories we are telling ourselves, especially if they don't act in the way that we think they should, especially those we have a personal conflict with. Basically, the theme of the story is if this person or situation was different, I would be happy. The Course in Miracles calls this a special relationship. We make the other person or situation responsible for our unhappiness. How very convenient for us. The special relationship happens in the moment. So for example, I can have a special relationship with my husband when I'm mad at him for not loading the dishwasher the correct way. And it can change in an instant if I drop that story of how he needs to change in order for me to be happy, and just maybe have some gratitude that he put the dishes in the dishwasher. The Course calls this a holy relationship. So at any given time, you are either in a special relationship or a holy relationship, moment by moment, and it can change. My biggest fear about the trip was being around someone 24/7 for a month while traveling. Someone who is so different than myself. And she was my boss. Anita is an extrovert, impulsive, politically conservative, a very devout Catholic, the mother of 4 children and a widow. She has a refreshing childlike exuberance, wears her emotions on her sleeve, and unabashedly asks for whatever she wants. Of course, my fear was based on the stories of what could happen, and you can be sure there was lots of opportunities for judgment and creating the special relationship. I would be happy if Anita was different. Fortunately, after years as a student of A Course in Miracles, I knew that if I'm unhappy, I've judged inappropriately and created a special relationship. I don't like being unhappy, so I can give up my need to be right, my thoughts that things or people have to be a certain way, because it doesn't get me closer to my goals of peace, love, and joy. And anyway, it's based on a story from the past or one I've created about the future. The sooner I give up the story and get into the present, the sooner I'm at peace and in a holy relationship. Here's an example. Anita and I were finally on our way home to the States, but there were several obstacles. For one, no airplane. Then it showed up, and finally on the plane, a delay to deboard a sick passenger before takeoff. Further delays. Finally, taking off too late to arrive in time for our connecting flight home. This was an opportune time for a special relationship, to think I would be happy if this situation was different. I just wanted to go home. But aware of my judgments, I turned to the only valid use of judgment. How am I feeling? Am I at peace? Not really. So I worked at letting go of my story. Well, our plane arrives in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. They have held our connecting flight for us. We board and sit on the tarmac for 2.5 hours. There was a problem with the plane. We deboard. It's 12:30 in the morning. We're given a meal, and 3 hours later, everyone is required to line up to get visas to enter Ethiopia. And then we're taken to different hotels. With large groups of very grumpy people checking in at the same time with passports and visas, it is 5:30 in the morning before we are finally in our rooms. 4 hours later, the shuttle to the airport arrives, an hour and a half earlier than planned, and we rush to get ready. When I climb aboard and sink wearily into a seat, Anita, who gets on behind me, pauses at the front of the bus and says loudly and cheerfully, like a camp counselor, "How did you all sleep?" Well, my internal banshee was screaming, do you have to do that? Nobody wants to hear this. Or essentially, I would be happy if you were different. I let the story go. And how did the people on the shuttle respond? Like it was a big party, with cheer. And how was I feeling? At peace, relaxed, and happy. This is what I've learned. If I don't like how I'm feeling, let go of the story, be in the moment, let go of holding other people responsible for my own perceptions and my happiness. Let go of my judgments and move from fear towards love. That's the miracle. And who doesn't want to feel love? Because love is good. Love is good. All the time? Love is good all the time. That is our nature. Wow. Our closing words are from Reverend Marisol Caballero, a Unitarian Universalist minister. May I be open to experience the holy all around me and within me. May I embrace the holy in others and know that I too am part of it all. Please join me in saying the chalice extinguishing words that are in the order of service. We extinguish this flame, the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Now let's form our closing.